Hey guys, this is Jay Calder with JAYONBOXING, and we're going to be going over the release of the 2024 Ring Magazine Awards, giving my take, my personal picks, where I agree and disagree, and all that good stuff. And of course, would love it a whole hell of a lot if you guys liked and subscribed to this channel, as well as definitely leaving your own personal award winners down in the comments section below. Definitely appreciate it. So on the screen here, you can see a rundown of the awards handed out to the big Ring Magazine Awards ceremony, which was held on January 12th. Also alongside this, you're going to see my picks for many of the same categories. Up front, I'm going to say that not all of the picks and categories are the same, and that's specifically true in regards to having women's categories by themselves. You know, I follow a decent bit of women's boxing, but not enough to confidently make picks like that for their own specific category. You know, I've had Natasha Jonas winning Comeback Fighter of the Year. I've also picked Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano in the past for their own awards as well, but in terms of individual categories for women, honestly, it would feel insulting to make that distinction and just quite fraudulent, to be perfectly honest, when in reality I should follow that side of the sport a bit more before doing so. That said, here's my take on the Ring Magazine's picks, where we agree and disagree, all that good stuff, so let's get into it. Starting off with the big one here with Fighter of the Year, and we are in agreement with Alexander Usyk. So yeah, definitely got to agree here. You know, every year you have 2 or 3 picks that seem like they should be unanimous. This is one of those picks for me. To put Usyk's year in perspective, the man that had effectively beat 2 of the 3 biggest threats at heavyweight for this era was Tyson Fury. He beat Deontay Wilder, kind of the biggest live threat you could have, and of course Vladimir Klitschko to win the title in the first place, who was sort of the standard bearer for the era prior. Fury was the man at heavyweight. The only guy he really missed was Anthony Joshua, which Usyk himself had taken care of, so again, you kind of were left with these 2, and the man to really beat was Fury, the guy who looks like the more pure heavyweight. And Usyk did it twice, in a span of 7 months, and it got easier for him. And let's not kid ourselves here, the powers that be would have loved a Fury win. Then he could face fellow Brits in Dubois or Joshua, and it really helps set up big fights where Usyk's already beat those guys, so they're not quite as big of fights. And still, it didn't matter if that deck was stacked against Usyk. He still got the job done, did it better along the way, and definitely for me is the right pick for Fighter of the Year. In terms of the Female Fighter of the Year, Ring Magazine picked Gabriela Fundora. Again, I didn't pick this category personally, but it feels right. You know, maybe some other female fighters had more impressive fights or bigger fights or whatever you want to say, but Gabriela put in some work this year. 3 fights, quality opponents along the way for the weight class, and won twice by stoppage, which can be tricky in women's boxing sometimes, so certainly the pick makes sense for me. In terms of Fight of the Year, again, we are in agreement with Ray Ford defeating Otabek Kolmatov. Again, we agree. This is an exciting video, huh? Everyone's just agreeing. It's very nice. But I mean, to me, this is just sort of the kind of fight that I like. I had to go with. You know, I like fights that have stakes, skill, fighters that are at the top or near the top of the sport and at the top of their games. And this fight to me had that. It was a very high level chess with some real brutality thrown in the mix. You have that dramatic finish and you have a great fight. So it's definitely Fight of the Year for me. In terms of Event of the Year, I actually went with Terence Crawford versus Israel Madrimov, whereas Ring Magazine went with Usyk versus Fury 1. Finally, some disagreement. Sort of. To be honest, I get why they went with Usyk Fury 1. It's the bigger event, bigger fight, more meaningful, blah, blah, blah. However, in my defense, I will say 2 things. For starters, the overall card of Bud versus Madrimov is much better. Much better. Too long? Maybe. Too much M&M? Definitely. But a better card. Secondly, I will say I think it's vital Riyadh season travel for it to truly boost the sport. You know, watching a decent fight in Gilberto Ramirez versus Chris Billum-Smith be watched by 25 disinterested Saudis when it could have done much better with crowds in England or on the west coast of America, yeah, it just doesn't work all the time. You got to pick and choose what events get held where. So my pick, in a sense, is a hope that they continue to take these shows on the road. I think it's important for the sport of boxing. Still, can't shade them too much for their pick. I do get it. And in terms of Trainer of the Year, I went with Robert Garcia. Ring Magazine also went with Robert Garcia. Yeah, another easier one for me if I have to be honest. Dude had fighters at all levels succeeding. Fighters taking out legends, winning titles, advancing their careers overall. And you know what? He wasn't yelling about it on Twitter all damn day. And you know what? He wasn't yelling about it on social media all day, trying to make fights that are never going to materialize and all this other nonsense. He just trained fighters, and get this, they were successful. Pretty interesting, right? Just went about his business. I know. Novel concept. Still, that earned some points for me, believe it or not, and I think it's a solid pick overall, so certainly in agreement there. Now, this next category, or these next categories, are not exactly the same. My breakout star was Khamzat Shiraz, and Ring's prospect was Moses Saitama. To be fair, these are not the exact same categories as mentioned, but close enough, kinda. Either way, look, for both spots, I like both picks. I think Saitama is showing great improvements and looks like he would be a live threat against a few of the bigger, more established names at heavyweight. So it certainly makes sense to pick him for a very highly touted prospect. 2025 should be a big year for him. And Shiraz is on the verge of a title shot against Carlos Adames, certainly a live underdog in that one. It's a tough fight, but he was definitely moved well in 2024 to allow it to develop, as well as also showcase more of his skills to bigger audiences while he stepped up that competition. So certainly to me, broke out in that respect. In that sense, I like both picks for their respective category. And in terms of round of the year, I did not pick this category, but Ring Magazine went with round 9 of Usyk Fury 1. As mentioned, didn't pick this category, but this would probably have been my pick if I have to be honest. I mean, the drama, the unbelievability of what you were looking at, the way it really swung the fight and made a dramatic difference. There's no denying this was the most talked about round of the year, and for good reason. It was that important to the sport. So the pick definitely makes the most sense. Would have won had I picked this category, but I'm not breaking down fights round by round this way. I like to watch the fights in their totality, and that's how I do it. But again, if I'm picking a round of the year, this definitely is it. Now, in terms of the upset of the year, I went with Daniel Dubois versus Anthony Joshua. Ring Magazine went with Bruno Sarasi versus Jaime Munguia. And I get their pick, It's also recent, so it's fresh on their mind, but I get it. Munguia has a sturdy chin usually, I guess, and Sarasi isn't a big puncher. He had like a handful of stoppages his entire career. So I think that adds to the shock of the result as well. Still, I gotta be honest. Dubois beating Joshua and the way he did it just hit different for me. He looked like the better fighter, the bigger puncher, the more assured fighter. And this is a dude that was stopped by a jab on the come-up. This is not what I expected to come out of Daniel Dubois. The turnaround for him in his career at this point is remarkable, and it really was embodied in this performance. Trust me, the odds will agree with Ring Magazine. Munguia was a much heavier favorite. I understand that. And they're both good picks in my opinion, but I'll stand by mine. That result shook me and for some reason just stands out more and therefore gets the nod from me. Now, in terms of the comeback of the year, I went with Daniel Dubois for many of the reasons I just mentioned. Ring Magazine went with Billy Dibb because they wanted to make me look like an idiot. And I understand this is a terrible comparison for me. Obviously, Billy Dibb is a much bigger, more deserving story for this particular thing. But we just looked at this award a bit differently. Dibb coming back from a battle with cancer is remarkable. And I'm not arguing my case here. I totally get it. It's just the better story, the more feel-good moment, and it's a testament to his character. Again, no argument from me. The way that I look at this award is the way I look at all of them. It's from a purely in-the-ring, winning meaningful big fights perspective. Dubois makes the most sense for me in that respect. But again, I totally get that Dibb just won the biggest fight of his life and certainly should get the nod here if you're looking at it from that perspective. Obviously, I'm not going to sit here too much and complain about this pick either way. Definitely shout out to Dibb. It's a truly remarkable story, one you should look into if you haven't, because it is a very heartwarming story as well. Certainly not going to agree too harshly here. And let's just move on quite quickly. And finally, we have KO of the year, and I went with Lucas Body over Ashton Silva, with Ring Magazine going with Dubois over Joshua. Yes, now finally we can get back to a pick where I'm much more confident in my selection and don't feel like a piece of trash for picking someone other than Billy Dibb. I get the Dubois pick, sure, but it was more of a beatdown over the entirety of the fight. Yes, Joshua fell heavy and it was a big shot, but it wasn't the same when you really compare them. If you take these two knockouts and compare them side by side, I don't think there are many knockouts that stand up to the Body Silva fight. And it was also a KO from an underdog, so you don't really get extra points if you're Dubois versus Joshua there. I just think it's the better overall knockout. So definitely siding with my pick on this one. Shocking, I know. And this one doesn't make me feel like a terrible person. So also a good thing for me. That about does it. So what do you guys think of my picks, the Rings picks? Let me know your picks down in the comments section below. Would love to hear those. And of course, check out the social media up top. Check out JAYONBOXING.com. Subscribe and check out another video here. Until next time.